right, everybody, welcome back to Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie Gray. This pod, we feature Bobby Ross. Bobby had 58 caps for Canada, tied for 10th most with Canadian caps, twice as captain, 419 points, third all-time for Canada. And back in 96, he scored 26 points versus Japan, which is fifth all-time for Canada in a match. Pretty impressive stuff. Member of the Rugby World Cup in 95, 99, and 03, BC Sports Hall of Fame in 2020, Victoria Sports Hall of Fame in 2020. Debuted on for Canada back in 89 with Ireland. And his last match was in 03 versus Tonga. So before we get to Bobby, we do this every week. I do the little plug just to make sure, especially if you're new, finding out what we're all about. And we're all about Canadian rugby players, Canadian rugby coaches, Canadian rugby administration, just to kind of give a little bit of light to those on the Canadian rugby front, because we need to make sure that these people, these men, these women, all have their stories heard. And this week our feature is Bobby. And but before we get to Bobby, you got to know how to contact us. We're on the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, and the email. Twitter at Canadian Ruck, Instagram _Canadian_Ruck, Facebook at the Canadian Ruck, and our email is the Canadian Ruck at gmail.com. We're on YouTube, where you can watch and listen, follow, and subscribe. To listen and follow, you can do it also on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Castbox. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you're sharing these messages out. We also have our own website, thecanadianruck.weebly.com, where you're going to find all kinds of information about the pod, about our guests, and all just very pertinent information. Before we get to Bobby, just some rugby news to kind of go over. It's been an interesting week. The thing caught my eye the most was that new global women's tourney. It was announced just a few days ago. This is Friday night while I'm setting up this pod, and this came out a couple of days ago. To me, this is extremely exciting. It's going to be an annual 3-tiered competition. It's going to align with the global calendar, aside from the World Cup years, obviously. And this is going to start in 2023 due to COVID, of course. Why not? Let's blame everything on COVID, but actually this is due to COVID, and it's going to be pushed back because the Rugby World Cup is now, as we know, being pushed to 2022. World Rugby is sinking in £6.4 million into the first 2 years of this event. Matches are going to run through September through October, and each tier will be in a standalone location. So this is going to be prime rugby. This is going to be an amazing event for the girls. Can't wait for this to get started. World Rugby Chair Bill Beaumont stated, by establishing a unified international 15s calendar and introducing Women 15, we are creating a platform for women's international teams to compete in more consistent, competitive, and sustainable competitions at regional and global level. This is an ambitious long-term commitment to make the global game more competitive, to grow the women's game, and support the expansion of Rugby World Cup to 16 teams from 2025 and beyond. So it sounds like World Rugby's put a lot of thought into this. They want to make sure the women's game grows, and they're targeting the 2025 Rugby World Cup to make sure it's grown by then. And for me, and for I think a lot, this goes without saying, it's a great initiative, and it's going to be excellent for our Canadian girls. It gives our Canadians a chance to play in a structured system against top teams annually and in one set location, which should cut down on travel costs. And as Canada's head coach, Sandro Fiorno, stated, exciting times for the women's game. Yes, Sandro, indeed it is. This is awesome. This is great. I'm so excited for the women's team. Games, more games. What's happening this weekend? Well, there's a lot. Final weekend of the Six Nations. Somewhat for Scotland and France. They still need to play due to that COVID outbreak with France a few weeks back, if that match goes ahead. But it's still in talks. The big question right now is whether the Premiership players are going to be made available. Lots of Premiership coaches aren't interested in losing their top players for another week. As for this weekend, Saturday features the undercard matches, Scotland versus Italy, followed by Ireland and England. The main event, of course, is Sunday's France versus Wales. Wales could take it all with a win, which would be exciting for Welsh rugby's. It looked like they were on the downside after the Rugby World Cup semifinal loss to the All Blacks back in 2019. But a win would give France a chance to win the tourney if and when they get to play Scotland, where they would need a win as well. Either way, it should be a great weekend of the Six Nations. My picks, Scotland over Italy, Ireland over England, and Wales over France. What about Super Rugby? Lots of that on tap as well. Super Rugby AU has the Rebels facing off against Orcas. Actually, they already faced off. They faced off last night. Taz have been struggling this year, and that continued as the Rebels beat them 33-14. Taz are still winless, and the Rebels are now sitting in third. Following that will be the Reds and Western Force. Reds are solidly in second place right now, and with Western Force in fourth and struggling, so I'm pulling on the Reds in this one as well. Super Rugby, Aotearoa, Hurricanes are playing the Chiefs. These two teams somehow are at the bottom of the ladder. I don't get it. There's plenty of big names on both sides. Sam Kane, Lachlan Boshier were both on pods earlier this year with me for the Chiefs, and they, I think, as of the recording, have gone 11 straight without a win. As of this year, neither of these teams have a win, which obviously will change this weekend unless there's a draw, which I can't see. I hope that doesn't happen. But either way, it should be an exciting match with lots of big names on either side of the ball. And then the final event of the weekend for Super Rugby is the Blues and the Crusaders. This is the premier Super Rugby game of the weekend. Crusaders are sitting in first. Blues tightly behind them in second place. This is going to be a great match. I'm hoping to find a stream of it somewhere. If you have some, please send it to me. And don't look now, but Major League Rugby is back. Right, this is exciting. I think everybody in Canada and the States that love rugby is excited to see Major League Rugby back on tap. And what I really love is the Rugby Network is free streaming all of the games. Download the Major League Rugby app, download the Rugby Network app, get access to all the games anywhere. This is amazing. Lots of Canadian Ruck Pod friends will be in action this weekend as well, and we wish them all the best. 6 games on tap. All games are on Saturday. First, we're kicking off to Doug Fraser and Old Glory DC. They're traveling down to Kyle Bailey and Nola Gold. That should be an exciting kickoff to the weekend. Another match, Rugby United New York is traveling to San Diego to face Travis Larson and Josh Thiel of the Legion. Travis and Josh are going to be upcoming guests. After that, we got New England Free Jacks. They're traveling to LA to face DTH in the Giltinis. That's going to be fun. And the Giltinis, as you know, are boasting a couple of Australian legends. They got Magito and Adam Ashley Cooper. So that back line in LA is going to be fierce. Then we've got your Toronto Arrows featuring Cole Keith, Ben Lesage, Paddy Parfrey, Aaron Carpenter, Rob Halley, and Bill Webb. They're facing off against Matt Heaton and Rugby Atlanta. Then we've got DJ Sears Drew and the Seattle Seawolves, and they're in Houston to face the Sabercats. And lastly, the Utah Warriors are in Austin to face the ever fast and tough Jeff Hassler and the Gilgronis. Some really exciting games, some big names. This is going to be a wicked weekend. Major League Rugby is actually trialing some new laws this year, looking at new ways to increase action. This is pretty cool. Hopefully you stumbled across this. Kick clock. So now the kicker only has 60 seconds for penalties and conversions. It's dropped 30 seconds. They're trying to resume play quicker. Scrum resets. Refs are using stricter protocols, which will limit scrums resets to 2. This should definitely speed up gameplay. This one's kind of neat. Under the posts. No conversions necessary if a try is scored under the post. This is going to be an automatic 7-pointer, and this is going to save time and get the ball back in play quicker. The offside line off of scrums. The offside line now is the feed line. All right. So the game aim at this one is to give the more time and space for the 9 and the 8 at the back of the scrum. Give them a little bit more freedom with the ball. Should create more creative action off those set scrum pieces. Lastly, red cards. I like this one. This has been talked about in other leagues as well, and I really enjoy it. On a red card, the offending player still leaves the pitch, still puts his team down to 14 players. Okay. After 20 minutes, when that player is off, his team now can bring a sub on for the remainder. So this is going to be interesting as the team and offending player still penalized. They get 20 minutes down. The offending player can't be used again, but it also gives the offending team a fighting chance as they don't have to remain down the entire duration of the match after that red card's been handed out. So that should be interesting. I like that idea to see how this is going to play out. So what a great weekend for a rugby fix. You get your Six Nations, you get your Super Rugby, and now our Major League Rugby is back. I can't wait for the Rugby Comatose to happen. And while you're going through that comatose, why don't you think about your golf game? Break Par Golf, serving Southern New Brunswick. Be ready for that 2021 season. Get your clubs regripped with brands like Golf Pride and Win, or even new clubs from Wilson, Torridge, or Ray Cook. Of course, accessories like rangefinders, GPS watches, or training aids like launch monitors, and much, much more. Taking orders now to be ready for the season. Check them out at facebook.com/breakpargolfsales or on their website, breakpargolfsales.weebly.com. Break Par Golf, here to help you break par, not your wallet. Now, stay tuned. We have Bobby Ross. So, Canadian Ruck welcomes legendary Bobby Ross. Bobby's played 3 Rugby World Cups for Team Canada, all over the map with the Canadian national team, starting in '89 with his first test to his last in '03 versus Tonga. Bobby, welcome to the Canadian Ruck.
Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate you asking me on.
It's the pleasure's all mine. So let's jump right in. So you're born and raised in British Columbia, out in Victoria. Tell us your origin story. Like, how did you get involved in rugby out there?
Well, that my exposure to rugby was through my school. I went to St. Michael's, right through from like grade 1 to 12, and I guess the first, we played, a mini rugby in grade 7, and then once I was in the senior school, obviously there was a pretty solid rugby program going there, and first rugby tour in grade 8 to Britain, and then we went, another one in Australia, New Zealand at the end of grade 9, and then Britain in grade 11. So that's smooth as where I got the exposure for sure, and just quite the rugby culture at that school, right? So half a dozen of the teachers were coaches, and they were playing first division on the weekend, and dragging us along, and it was just you couldn't help, if you were athletic minded, you could not help but get immersed in it.
I like that. That's one of the things I'm pushing here in New Brunswick is to change the senior season, like the club season, from the fall to the spring, so it lines up with our high school team, so that high school games can happen the same days as club games and stuff like that, just to try and get more interest to see what the club atmosphere is like. It's kind of
Yeah,
neat that it happens out there in Vancouver, or
yeah.
sorry, Victoria. So where'd you go after St. Michael's?
Um, Upon graduating, like to be honest, my first love was baseball, and so I played that in the spring, around a bunch of other sports, basketball and soccer and rugby at school. And so when I actually my graduation day, I was thinking about this the other day. The day I actually had my graduation ceremony, my dad put me on a ferry and came over to Vancouver, and I had a tryout for the junior national team at Nat Bailey Stadium, and did my thing, took a bunch of infield, hit a bunch of balls. Things went pretty well. I got the call a couple of days later that I got invited back to Ontario to try out. There's like 60 guys that went back there and try out for the junior national team to play in the World Junior Tournament. So back I went. Pretty intense couple weeks, made the cuts, and ended up representing Canada, and we won the bronze medal in that. And then had previously had a scholarship arranged to go to Washington State to Green River College. So came back, went down there, had a blast.
Was that for baseball too?
That was for baseball. Yeah. Yeah. So then I came, and then I had a lot of fun doing that. Came back in the summer, and a few games were sort of dangled in front of me rugby wise, for BC juniors and that type of thing. And I just figured out right then, that I was having more fun playing rugby. And so I ended up not going back down a little bit to my parents' chagrin at the time, and enrolling in UVic. And pretty quickly there was a Rugby Canada junior tour to Wales. So I ended up going on that in September, captaining that team, and then just carried on from there.
So you go down to the States for baseball,
Yeah.
which is huge. Baseball is one of America's top sports. It's their favorite pastime. How was that like when you've got this torn between going to play rugby in Canada, which eventually, pulled you back, but did you have aspirations of, playing professional ball,
Yeah.
or, yeah, how
Yeah.
were you in university? Like, could you have made it, do you think?
Well, I mean,
You can toot your own horn here. That's what this is
bit of a
for.
loaded question. I mean, I was doing well down there, and I was just going to like a community college, right? It wasn't like a 4-year college, but in the 1 year that I was there was 4-year colleges looking at me. The Dodgers and the Reds were interested.
That's cool.
And I mean, that was something that I always wanted. Like growing up, I was like, oh my God, want to be a, Major League Baseball player, right? And, whether or not that was actually a reality, I mean, the competition level is stiff. And at that time, I mean, that was, 30 years ago. Canadians weren't given the same opportunities as an equally skilled American player, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, I think that I made the right decision for sure. But yeah, whether I would have got drafted probably, but then it's just you know,
Numbers
it's
game.
it's a lottery after that.
Yeah. But that's still really cool. Like, one thing I always say when I talk to people on the pod or just in general is that um, people talk about multi-sport athletes, and I consider you an athlete if you play more than one sport. If you're just a rugby player, you're a rugby player. If you're a baseball player, you're a baseball player. But if you play both, then you're an athlete. I think the multi-sport should be removed. So how important was it for you playing baseball? How did that help your rugby game, or vice versa even?
Yeah, I just think in general, I mean, especially at that age, you know, you're 14, 15, 16, right? I think at that age, like you just, as an athlete, you just want to have fun, right? So, you know, it was fun to play baseball for 3 months. It was fun to play rugby for 4 months, and then you flipped over to play basketball, right? Like, so I think it, you know, it keeps you engaged, right? It keeps you fresh. And it's just fun to do all those different things. I mean, I know there's a tendency these days for, you know, kids to get sort of, you know, sidelined or not, to be specialized essentially in a certain sport. And that, you know, that's the new model, and it probably works for some kids, but, you know, back then that wasn't really an option. Like 30 years ago, like nobody really specialized too early, like unless you were in perhaps, you know, like, you know, a figure skater, right? Where that's so specific that you need to spend so much time to get good at it at a young age, right? But yeah, and there's so much transfer, I think, between sports. I mean, just like game sense, when you're, you know, it's the same sort of idea. Like playing basketball, you got five guys on the court. You're trying to get open. You're trying to set guys up. Same thing in soccer. You're trying to get open. You're trying to pass to guys, communicating, and all the kicking skills. Like for me, I mean, through baseball, obviously a lot of hand-eye stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that transfers over to catching balls, whether, you know, and for, you know, playing soccer for so long beforehand, that, you know, no doubt had an impact on my kicking abilities, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I just think the more things you can do, the better off you're going to be, the more well-rounded you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, eventually, maybe it's not quite the same today with the way, you know, the sort of specialization model is, but I think you know, if you the cream's going to rise to the top, right? If you at whatever age it is, if you've got if your son or daughter is a good athlete, they're gonna find their way to the highest level if they want to play that sport,
Yeah,
even if they're playing two or three other ones.
that's fair. You mentioned a point a little while ago too about when people become specialized, and you didn't talk about an age range, but maybe it's the cream of the crop that rises. You talked about that, but if you're, you know, that player that has those Jordan-like basketball abilities, or a Mark McGuire like in baseball, chances are you're going to know that at an early age and stick around. But I think personally, for the general athlete, or the people that are just playing sports, the more well-rounded, the better awareness they have, the better athletic they are. I think it's better for them in a variety of platforms. I think that's kind of where you were going with that. I
Yeah,
could be putting
yeah,
words in your
no,
mouth
agreed.
though.
Yeah, you just I think playing multiple sports just makes you a better rounded athlete and a better rounded person.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let's jump in here. I found this interesting. We chatted a little bit through email about the Rugby World Cups, and you played in three: 95 in South Africa, 99 in Wales, 03 in Australia. Uh, Canada had some pretty good squads there. I want to hear your thoughts on that 95 Rugby World Cup. I'm a history teacher. We do a unit on apartheid and things like that. And we dig in deep on Nelson Mandela. Can you talk about what it was like being in South Africa with Mandela there, South Africa just being freed from apartheid, but you're there playing rugby, and it's the first time South Africa's been invited to the Rugby World Cup, and they're actually hosting. How was that
Yeah,
experience?
it was quite something, especially to look back on now. I mean, at the time I was only 25 and probably wasn't too hip to, you know, everything that was going on in the world. But, you know, obviously I knew that, apartheid was ending there, and rugby was going to be the first showcase event, right? Um, it was exciting going for sure, and we're going. That was my first World Cup, and it was just like, it was amazing, right? But I remember, like, normally when you go to a country, like you get off the plane, you go through customs, and you show them your passport and everything like that. But that particular time, we landed in Johannesburg, got off the plane. There was like 20 native, like, warriors on each side off the tarmac, walked through there.
A little intimidating.
Yeah, well, no, it was fantastic, right? It was just like this amazing welcome. And never once on that trip did anybody pull a passport out.
Wow.
we just were in the country. And then we got on another plane from there and went to Port Elizabeth, which was our home base for the trip. And the seat directly in front of me was Bishop Desmond Tutu.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was just like, we all knew who he was, right? But nobody, like, sort of tapped him on the shoulder. But yeah, I mean, it was an event, right? And pretty exciting for, like, just in general, and being a part of that, the rugby culture down there. We're super, we're welcomed amazingly, just by everybody. They're happy to have Canada, and Canada obviously had a pretty big name for itself going in there after, the success in '91, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just soaking up what you're talking about here, like the atmosphere. I'm just picturing that every time you say something like you getting off the plane and the native warriors there, and then Desmond Tutu, and I'm picturing all that and how amazing that would have been. Like you said, you were 25 at the time, but
Yeah.
reminiscing back on it, you can see it in your eyes how you light right up talking about that experience.
Yeah, it was a experience of a lifetime for many reasons. And I mean, we took an afternoon off and went into one of the townships one time. Again, super well received. They're all happy to see us, but like, I can say most of us, probably all of us, have never seen a township before, and just what the living conditions were. So it was definitely an eye opener and a humbling experience.
Made you probably feel proud to be Canadian, but also, I guess, humbled by what you were there to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So you said you're 25, you were just a youngster at the time when you went to the 95 Cup, but 03, you were a wily vet. You would have been 32, 33 years old in Australia, and you were a kicking phenom for Canada for a number of years, and even in 03. Can you talk to us about the differences in gameplay from you from a personal standpoint, 25 to 33, being a leader on that 03 team in Australia?
Yeah. I mean, it's, the sort of course of a rugby player's life. You're young and hopefully mostly healthy, right? Like, physically probably better than you are when you're older. It's that balance between that and experience, right? So I was pretty raw in 95 and around those times. And, by the time 2003 rolled around, I was actually 34 and, getting older, and sort of, got a little more experience, could read the game a little bit better, but had to work at my fitness harder, right? So I was actually, fitter probably in 03 than I was in 95. Things changed. Like 95 was the start of professionalism. We worked hard, but we didn't, really know exactly what we should be doing. But by the time 2003 rolled around, I'd been over to Cardiff and been in that professional environment for a year. Our training regimes had got better. So yeah, by the time 2003 rolled around, my body was breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have the benefit of a bit of experience at that point to go along with things.
So you talked about that. You talked a little bit about Cardiff. You talked about professionalism there. And since professionalism has come into the game of rugby, Canada's slowly falling back from the tier 1 nations, unfortunately. But we've started up Major League Rugby. We've got the Toronto Airs. We've got a bunch of players in the States. How can that help rugby in Canada? How can it help rugby in general by having a professional rugby program in North America?
Yeah, well, I think that's the new model. The model when I was a kid, what, like, call a spade, like BC was the hot point or the hotbed of rugby, right?
Hmm.
And if you wanted to get better and you wanted to, make a national team, reality was that you came out and played in BC
Yeah.
because you could play pretty much year round and all the coaches and selectors and that type of thing were out here. So, I mean, the model back then was you played club and then you played in the McKechnie Cup, which was like, Crimson Tide was the island team. There was, UBC, Fraser Valley, Vancouver, and those, to just make those teams, like, as a kid, like when I was 19, I stepped into that first locker room and I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was just stacked with like legends and studs, like guys that, you looked up to and you've been watching since you were 10 years old. Now I'm in the same room with these guys. Right. And then the next step was BC, and same thing, like, holy cow, I cannot believe, I'm in there. So there's this huge motivation and clear stepping stones. And then obviously from there, your next step is to play for Canada, right? Those steps, like with respect to those competitions, I don't think are as clearly defined as they were now.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit vague as to what to do. And there's been competitions that have come and gone and through Canada. But now there's not really that sort of, like I said, clear stepping stone, or series of stepping stones. But what MLR will do, if it continues to gain footholds, it will give kids something to shoot for, right?
Right.
And if there's, more teams added, there's more opportunity for kids in Canada to do that, and that's likely the new model going forward. So I think it's going to be, it is a good thing, and it's gonna continue to help kids get into that level.
Yeah, I'd love to see one another team in out west, out in BC, and one here in the Maritimes, but I think that might be a few years off before they expand again back into Canada. What can Rugby Canada do, I guess, to better promote rugby within our country? Like, what are things that you see that Rugby Canada could help get more people involved and invested in the game?
Yeah, well, I think they're doing, you know, like they started that rookie rugby program pre-COVID, and obviously
Yeah,
things have kind of stalled out a bit, but
yeah,
that's a great program. And that sort of, you got to get to the grassroots of the game and get to the kids, right? So, but that takes money
yeah.
to do it properly. And it's a big country. We've always struggled as a country financially. What we need realistically is a big sponsor
Yeah.
that's going to come in and make a multi-year commitment and start with the ground up and see kids that are 10, 12, 13, 14 through for 5 years and see where they go.
Hmm.
I think adding the Pacific Pride back into the system is going to be hugely impactful. I don't know if it's going to have quite the same results as it did, back in the day when it started, but I think that's a really important, addition.
I agree. Um, the rookie rugby thing, you're right. My wife and I started a program here 5+ years ago. We went from 6 kids in our first year to 60 in our fourth year. And then COVID happened last year.
Yeah.
And this year, we're not sure if we can do it because the insurance is the kicker now. It went from, I paid $330 to insure 60 kids for 8 sessions plus 2 jamborees. It went from $330 to $3,000. And
Wow.
it's for non-contact rugby. And I'm not sure how to do that now. I'm
Yeah.
kind of at a
Was that
stumbling point
was that insurance premium bump just because of COVID, or
because of rugby, because
just
it's
because of rugby? Okay.
rugby. Yeah. Even
Right.
when you say like it's non-contact, it's flag rugby, but because
Mhm.
rugby's in the name. So trying to think of a way around that at the moment. So
Yeah, that's a
if you
problem.
have any ideas, let me know.
Yeah, I'll think about that one
Yeah.
tonight.
All right, so Bobby, we're at the section now where we do our quick fire. So this is not meant to make you think a lot, but you might have to. There's about 20 questions.
Ooh,
Half of them are rugby based, half of them are personality based, and it's really just for fun. So I want you to have some fun with this. Do you think you
sure.
want to give it a go?
Absolutely.
All right. Question one: best team you ever faced?
All Blacks.
All Blacks. What year do you know offhand?
94.
94. Jonah
Yeah.
Lamu.
He was on that squad, but he wasn't playing in that particular game. But yeah, I could tell you a couple stories about that. This probably doesn't fit into the rapid fire thing, but yeah, it was they were a handful.
Oh, no, talk about it. Bring it up. I want to hear
Yeah,
this.
okay, so yeah, that was down in New Zealand in '94, and played the All Blacks at Eden Park, like holy grail of New Zealand rugby down there,
Yeah.
and we got clobbered. I mean, it was they were just different level, right? I remember the first 5 minutes of the game. There was a ruck on our 10-meter line, and our whole back row got sucked into the ruck, and Jamie Joseph peeled around the back with the ball, full steam, running at me. And I just kind of looked at him. I actually had this thought. I go, well, this guy's got nothing to lose. And I dove at his ankles. I think my teeth got caught in his laces and he fell over. But yeah, that was something. That was a big eye opener. I remember walking into that was Andrew Merton's first cap.
Oh, cool.
And I went in to trade jerseys after the game with Andrew, and walked in there, and Frank Bunce was sitting on a bench having a Steinlager, and he just had his shorts on, and there was like a very defined V from his waist to his shoulders, and then a pyramid from his shoulders to the base of his ears. And I just kind of was like, okay, we got guys that look like that, but they got small numbers on them, not not backs. So
Yep.
yeah, it was that was an eye opener for sure.
You still have that jersey from Mertens?
He wouldn't trade
Because it was his first.
It was his first jersey, so yeah, he won't do it, I guess.
So did you get one from somebody else, or?
Nope, not that game. No.
All right. Who's the best player you ever faced?
Best player. I think that goes back to one of my first sort of international experiences. I was playing against David Campese. Not like number for number, but I ended up one-on-one with him in a couple situations, and he just absolutely turned me inside out.
I'm sure it wasn't that bad. I'm sure you gave it a good go.
Well, yeah, okay. Let's leave it like that then.
All right. Who's the toughest player you ever faced? And when I say that, it's the guy you look up 1v1, and you're hoping that they just drop the ball or their boot comes off or something like that.
Probably Al Sharon.
That's fair.
And we didn't play against each other too often, thankfully, but yeah, nobody wants to get too close to Al in the game, in practice, on the bus. You could just anytime he can just split you open.
Nice. All right. What was the best match you were ever a part of?
Best match I was ever part of.
Could be university, could have been high school.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot. I mean, if you start from the most recent, going back, I mean, the final World Cup game against Tonga in 2003 was kind of special because it kind of knew it was my last game.
Emotional.
Yeah, and it was a good result. I mean, we needed a win at that point. That was pretty amazing. There's been moments throughout the sort of test career that were amazing. One of the most amazing memories for me in rugby is when I was 20. We had in the 1989, the centenary year, we had the All Blacks, Ireland, England, and Australia come through and play BC in the course of a month.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was an amazing string. And in Victoria at Royal Athletic Park, there was the biggest crowd I've ever seen in Victoria still for a rugby game. And we played Australia, and it was unbelievable atmosphere in there. And we ended up losing the game, but we scored a try from our own goal line. Tommy Woods started the move, and then he ended up scoring it in the opposite corner to tie it up with 25 minutes to go. Crowd went ballistic. I mean, that was unreal. That's always sticks with me. The same sort of time frame, my first cap against Ireland in Victoria. It's pretty neat to be able to have that in your hometown.
Absolutely.
Right. So.
All right. Who was the best team you played with?
The best team I played with. Okay. Well, again, that's a tough pick,
It
but
is.
I'm gonna go back to my
No,
grade 12 team.
I was going to say before you answer,
Yeah,
when you pick one team, you're leaving a lot of people out, so you might take a few guys off here.
exactly, exactly. It doesn't. Yeah, don't take it personal, fellas.
That's
But
right.
yeah, so my grade 12 team at St. Michael's was unbelievable. Like we went, I think we went 14-0, had 600 and some odd points for, 44 against. We had, I think in grade 12, I think we had five guys from that team named to the Canadian under 19 team. And it was unreal. It's still, much to Gareth's chagrin, it's still widely known as the best team that the school's ever had. So,
Bobby, what's your favorite rugby tradition?
well, my favorite, like, there's plenty. Again, these questions are so tricky. They're great, but they're tricky. But I mean, what I loved most about the game growing up was playing your heart out and then going and having a beer with the other guys and socializing. And that's kind of changed over the course of time, and through professionalism, we've gotten away from that. But I don't know, a couple of years ago, I was going through one of my old Rugby Canada jackets and found the invitation card to a Canada versus Scotland post-match function. It was after we played Scotland at Murrayfield.
Yeah.
And those big events like that, when you go to a home nation, or you have a big test match somewhere, and you've got this amazing banquet after, where everybody's intermingled, sitting together. And back in the day, like when everybody was a little looser and socialized a little harder, that was amazing.
That sounds pretty cool. That's one of my favorite things about rugby as well, is that mingling with the team afterwards, whether, it's high school level and you take your boys and you share a Coke with them, or a Gatorade, or club level, or what have you. It's always one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
All right. What was your rugby nickname?
Well, boob. Just stick an extra O in there, and boob it was.
Do people still call you that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
I won't.
That's okay.
Who's the player you love to smash?
The player I love to smash. Well, I wasn't exactly what you would call a, smasher, but I always enjoyed getting to play against Gareth. And
Okay.
we had, I probably took, more of the brunt of anything, but
He's a big guy.
we had some good physical battles in some trial games.
And he's got that big chest there. I imagine it'd be a little tricky at times to get it better of him.
Tough to get your arms around.
Yeah. Right. Any rugby superstitions?
I always, before every single game, I sat down and polished my boots.
Okay, that's a good.
Yeah, it was just a thing I did, and it just kind of set the tone for the day.
Get your head set in the game.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I did this with my family a few weeks ago. We went axe throwing, which was a lot of fun. Who would be three people that you would take axe throwing for a tournament?
For a tournament?
Yeah.
Like
rugby, rugby world domination. Who you taking?
Rugby guys. Who would I take for world domination axe throwing championship? Mark Cardinal.
Okay.
Guy's a legend. He's a rugby legend, but he's also a legend with a chainsaw. So he's gonna be good with an axe as well.
It's close to an axe, yeah.
Yeah. Probably I would strongly consider Tommy Woods.
Okay.
And my dad.
Okay. That's a good shout. Anytime you can take your dad in these things, that's always awesome.
Yeah.
Right. What's the most used app on your phone?
Text.
Just text?
Well, yeah, it's just, with my business, it's just, a constant barrage of text, and it seems to be the easiest way to communicate with people for the most part.
Fair enough. What's your go-to food? You're thinking a lot about this one.
Fish.
What kind of fish?
Just mostly salmon, halibut.
Salmon. Okay. Yeah. Chips or cookies?
Chips.
What kind of chips?
Salt and vinegar.
Salt and vinegar, that's a nice one. French fries or onion rings?
Fries.
French fries or poutine?
Fries.
Okay. Favorite beer?
Budweiser.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
It's kind of lame, but
no, I'm
I'll
not
be
gonna
honest.
say. I'm not gonna say. Yeah, I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
All right, where's the best place for a post-match beer? I think I know.
James Bay Clubhouse is pretty solid.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say in the other team's club or the other team's changing room, but James, a few people have said that same place. So,
Yeah.
what is a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Well, I'm trying to decrease my guilty pleasures these days, but if I had to say it, I'd probably say a good bottle of red wine.
Okay, any particular brand, or is it just has to be good and expensive?
It doesn't have to be good and expensive, but I like Tignanello.
Okay, what is your favorite song or your favorite band?
Um, Favorite song, I'm probably going to have to say 10 Years After, A Space and Time. So that's the name of the album. I'd love to change the world 10 years after. But band wise, I mean, I grew up listening to I had an older brother, an older sister, grew up listening to the Doors, still love the Doors, love the Stones, Zeppelin. But I'm pretty diverse in my tastes, I guess. I like I listen to a lot of country music now as well.
Okay, so 70s rock and country music.
Yeah, just all over the map.
I like
Yeah.
that stuff. That's good. What series are you binge watching right now?
Just finished Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
And I finished Ozark in the summer.
I
That was
haven't
solid.
started. Is that one good? I haven't started
Yeah,
that one.
I like it. Yeah, it's pretty engaging.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot I'd watched the first 3 or 4 seasons of Peaky Blinders, and I touched that up the other night. So I polished off season 5 of that.
Is that like Peaky Blinders? I've seen like movie posters or video posters for it. Is that like a 1800s mafia or something like that?
Yeah,
Or
like sort of like 1920s Birmingham, England,
oh, okay,
just street gangs that. Yeah, and this one particular one, was a little nastier and more clever than everybody else.
might have to take that one up. What's your favorite movie?
Again, many choices, but growing up, it was The Natural.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it was just stuck with me for a long time.
yeah, yeah. Good baseball movie. All right, 3 questions left, and these are the ones that usually people get hung up on a little bit. So you might, if you need to take your time, I can always do a little editing. All right.
Yeah, freeing my
Ready?
mind, freeing my mind.
Ready?
Yeah.
Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life? It doesn't have to be somebody athletic, in the
Yeah,
movie, Kevin Costner, maybe, but maybe
yeah,
it's somebody else out there.
yeah.
I had
Wow.
I had
How
Leslie
about,
McKenzie tell me off when I asked her this because she couldn't think of one. It was kind of funny.
well, I thought of a couple guys, but
Oh, okay.
uh, I think Keanu Reeves. How about that?
Nice, good BC boy. Nice.
Yeah, with had some. I was well known. He still got some hair. I was well known for some. My hair
Some
back in the
flow.
day. It seems to have left me now. So
That's why I wear a hat in all of my pods.
I got a lot of hats. I got more hats now than I did 10 years ago.
All right, next one, follow up. Who would play the leading lady?
I don't know why I thought of this. My wife's not that far away. She's probably going to hear me say this, but
She doesn't have to know.
Michelle Pfeiffer. She
Okay,
just reminds me. Yeah.
that's
So
good. That's a good one. And the last one, I've had a few guys that wouldn't answer it. They were scared that they were going to get in trouble. So good, bravo.
I can only get in trouble so many times. So
That's true. All right, what would the movie be called?
oh, man, that's so tough.
Yeah, see,
Um,
this is where they get mad at me.
this
So
is a
these
story.
aren't
This
quick fire.
the story of my life. What would the movie be called? Um,
Story of my life.
well, it could be. That's fairly fairly general, but story of my life. I would just, what? I would say it sounds kind of weird, but fortunate.
Fortunate. Ah, I think that's good. I think that's really good. I think that's a great name for a movie of your life. I think that would be awesome. All right, so those were the quick fires. They're done. Like I said, the last few tend to take a little bit longer, but you did pretty good there. It's pretty
Yeah.
good.
All right.
All right, only a handful of questions left. Who was your childhood hero?
Like, are we talking like sports hero or just
Could
hero in
be
general?
hero in general. Like when you were a kid growing up, who did you look up to?
Well, my parents,
Yeah.
like both of them. Yeah, they gave me every single, opportunity that I wanted to pursue. They're always there for me, always supportive. I mean, they came to every games. They came, they coach stuff. My dad was coaching baseball, not all the time, but like, for a couple of years. My mom was in the concession, and they followed me on tours. Not any tour, but just World Cups. They showed up
Mhm.
in France and Australia, and yeah, they've just been a real solid influence and force in my life.
That's really good. With regards to rugby, who had the biggest impact on you as a player?
Well, there's a few people for sure. And I'll mention them in a sec, but I think the culture of rugby at St. Michael's had like probably the biggest impact, in general, right? Because there, like I said, there was like we were playing, like Johnny Graff and I were in grade 11 and 12. We were playing first division rugby at the time, which is equivalent to Premier Rugby now, like on Saturday with our teachers, and then we were, having chemistry class with the same teacher, like 2 days later. So there was like the rugby culture was just so amazing there. And like I said, like Ian Hidley was a coach, or a teacher there. And we'd look out in class, and I'd look out there and I'd see Ian doing sprints, training. Right. And we're just kind of like, and I right then I was like, okay, well, he plays for Canada. That's what you got to do to play for Canada. Right.
Right.
Um, Within this, like in that high school time frame as well. I mean, obviously, Alan Reese had our group of players from like Garristad from grade 10 through to 12. So he was with us for 3 years. Brilliant rugby mind, great, great player in his own right, back in Wales. And we learned a lot from him.
Yeah, I
And
imagine.
and he was a halfback, so I probably was the beneficiary a little bit more of his tutelage. But beyond that, Don Burgess had a huge impact on my life, a rugby and, kicking as well. Obviously, he was like a amazing teacher of that. Gary Johnson kind of gave me my first crack, right, against, Ireland in '89. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of big influences. But
Well,
and from a sort of if you go back a question or two, like who was my hero growing up, like from a rugby perspective, you know, like in town was Mark Wyatt.
nice.
Like I watched him kick a ball when I was whatever 13, 14 or whatever it was, and I was just like, okay, that's different, right?
Yeah,
And I want to be able to kick a ball like that.
yeah. Some good names there. Yeah, a lot of great support, a lot of great rugby support growing through there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think I know the answer to this, but I want to get your take on it. How important is team bonding, camaraderie, especially at the national level with the rugby team?
Well, I mean, it's if you want to have success, it's everything, right? That's probably what you were thinking I was going to say, but if you've got 15 super talented guys that don't really get along, playing against 10 super talented guys and 5 pretty good guys that will die for each other, those guys are going to win, right?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, it just, if you know that everybody has got your back, it makes the difference. And it's not just the guys on the field, it's the guys that are in the squad and don't start, and that can be a destructive, force if everybody's not together, right? And
right.
I mean, I'm not sure if you know this stat, kind of just sort of plays into the whole thing, but I mean, I ended up playing a lot for Canada, getting, I don't know, 57, 58 caps or whatever it is, but I sat on the bench and did not get in my early days 24 times. So I know what it's like I know what's like on both sides of the coin, right?
You could almost easily just see yourself just packing up, and that enough's enough, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and a couple times it was like, that's where, it doesn't make any sense for me anymore to be doing this, right?
Hmm.
But, you've got a role to play no matter what position you're on the field, whether you're starting or not. And down the road, you can, and now you can come off the bench and turn a game,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's important that everybody's on the same page.
You've played high competitive baseball as well. Is the camaraderie different across the board in your opinion between rugby and other sports?
Um, well, I mean, I never played like too far on after like with baseball. So I was like, 18 when I sort of stepped away from it. Camaraderie was great. I mean, it was, I was good friends with everybody on the team. But there's something different in my mind about rugby. I don't know if it's the physicality and the sort of, the bonding that you do through that. Um, but the same, I'm sure, hockey players would say the same thing about their sport too, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, brutally physical and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm biased for sure, but I just, I think that for whatever reason, rugby is it's just its own little sort of atmosphere with respect to that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's. It's 2021 right now. I think my years have been getting mixed up over the last 15, 18 months. But let's fast forward here to 2025, 30 years out from that 95 Rugby World Cup, that first time that you went with Canada on the World Cup adventure. What are those guys saying about you in the room as Bobby the player, as Bobby the guy that was a member of that team? What do you think they're saying? What do you want them to say about you?
Um, well, I've got a pretty good relationship with everybody for the most part, right? So hopefully it's somewhat flattering, but I would like them to think that I was a team player, um, and somebody that loved representing Canada. That's something that's very special to me to have had the opportunity to do that. Um, I maybe that they might say that I had a flair for a bit of flair and could put a few points on the board.
You third all
Devastating.
time for Canada, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And
Almost 500 points,
yeah,
over
yeah,
400. Yep.
yeah. No, it was a good run for sure. And probably they would all say they still bug me about it. Good hair and probably also a devastating tackler.
And the Keanu Reeves thing too, probably, right?
And they're all laughing at the last one. And what, sorry?
And the Keanu Reeves thing as well, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I tried to pull up some footage there. I have to dig a little bit deeper for some of those tackling the tackles that you're talking about there. So,
You're gonna have to dig real deep.
all right, just a couple left here, Bobby. Before the pod, I was admiring the artwork behind. Can you talk to us about any significance in the First Nations art you have behind you on the wall there? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a selection of West Coast Native art. Nothing that's family related per se, but as I did mention before, I'm a First Nations Songhees band member, and we've been around here for a long time, and my grandfather was the chief of the Songhees in Victoria here for a number of years.
That's it's really interesting for sure. Did so like did your were you the first member of your family that played rugby, or is it something that's been around?
Well, actually, my dad was a really good athlete as well, but he went off to dental school when he was like 21, and when he came back, it was like he was just like business oriented and didn't want to
Hurt his
screw his
hands.
hand up for his work, right? But he was a really good rugby player. He played for the Tide, and he actually played for um, I don't even know what year that would be. See, 29, 39. Yeah, probably like in around 39 or 40 or something like that. He played, I think the All Blacks came to town. Then the Tide played against the All Blacks.
Cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
All right. Lastly, here, talk to us a little bit about your real estate company, Bobby Ross Real Estate. Like, is it commercial? Is it housing?
Yeah,
Give your
so it's
business
not
a plug.
actually, yeah, I mean, that's just, my branding's Bobby Ross Real Estate. I work for Pemberton Homes, which is Mike Holmes's family company that he owns and operates in up and down Vancouver Island.
Cool.
But I'm a residential realtor. I've been doing it now this is my 16th year, which just means I'm getting old. But yeah,
Just
no,
means
it's
you know your trade.
yeah, well, something, yeah, that too. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's one of the things I like about it the best is I get to work with some great people, and I do get to work with a reasonable number of rugby folks as well.
That's pretty cool. That's nice. It's cool that you were able to start that almost after you retired from rugby, and you've been plugging along with it ever since, and doing
Yeah.
all right. Your website's awesome. It's a lot of great information on there. So I imagine business is going well for you. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Lastly, any great rugby stories you care to share with us?
Yeah. Anything that you've caught wind of or want to ask, or just in general?
Just in general. I like to stay. A lot of people will make sure you talk to so and so about this, but
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, like again, how do you pick? I've been so fortunate to have been on so many great teams with so many great players, and travel the world, 5 times over. Played in pretty much all the big stadiums in the world. One of the things I love to do was like the Friday kick around, after the walkthrough before the game on Saturday was like, especially in big stadiums, like the kickers would stick around, and there was like, 2 or 3 guys. We had the whole stadium to ourselves. We're kicking off like a golf fairway. And it was just sort of a pure hour, and we just, like joked around and kind of challenged each other sometimes, but it was just those are really cool moments for sure. There's a couple funny stories surrounding like when I got my 50th cap in Paris. Al, I think I was about maybe the fourth or fifth guy at that point that got their 50th cap, and Al was the captain, and he had started a tradition of the guy who was getting his 50th cap to lead the team onto the field, right? Like normally that's captain's job, right? So we're standing in the tunnel, just finished pissing rain. Like the pitch was immaculate in warm up. It just unloaded for 25 minutes. Stand in the tunnel, the French team's off to our left, and I'm a couple guys behind Al, and he turned around to me, and he goes, "Boob, where you go, kid?" So I knew what he meant. So I, got out around the corner, jumped out in front, sprinted out onto the field, over the PA system. Like in French, I could hear the guy go, coming onto the field, Bobby Ross, it's his 50th cap. And there was 50,000 people there, and they were super receptive. Big cheer. And there was a 50-piece brass band playing out there, marching around in the middle of the field. So I get out there, stop, turn around to high five the guys. Nobody there. You just like let me go. And so there I was standing in the middle of the field. And normally when you get on the field, it's like, I rarely looked up at the crowd and stuff, because it's just like time to get down to business. You don't want to get distracted.
But that's all you could look at. Right?
Yeah. So but I kind of just actually, one of the few times I just took a breath and went, okay, I'm just going to soak this in. Just did a slow 360, looked around, and by that time the guys got out there, and I high-fived them all when they came by. So that's a pretty special sort of goosebump moment, right?
Remember anything else about that game?
Yeah, I mean we played reasonably well. It was a pretty strong French squad. We played quite well. I think we lost 30-3. Just deplorable conditions, like just an absolute slop fest. And then we had what I talked about before. We had this unbelievable banquet upstairs, with the French team and everybody. And, like, I just remember the meal. I specifically remember the meal because I'm a hunter and a fisher, and the big, huge, entree was like venison, right? So it was so cool. And Gareth was retired at that point, but he was there. I think he was the CEO at that point, and Prime Minister Chrétien was in Paris, so he ended up coming up and sitting with Gareth, and I think I don't know, I did a big punt or something like that, or maybe kicked a goal, and he turned to Gareth and said, "Hey, that number 10, hey, he's got a pretty big boot." So anyway, just goofy little stuff like that, right? Gareth thought that was hilarious, and
Yeah.
he relayed that to me after. Yeah, other stuff. I mean, going to Cardiff was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That was sort of at the front end of um, Canadians making inroads in professionalism over there. I mean, and it wasn't like Cardiff's world famous kind of like Manchester United in essence of rugby in Britain, right? So it was amazing going there, and I remember the first afternoon I was actually there. I hadn't actually, I wasn't cleared to play yet, so I was just kind of getting bounced around between booths and introduced to people, and one of the owners said, "Hey, come on, I want to introduce you to somebody." So I went over to the next room and come into this room, Gareth Edwards, right? Like,
Wow.
there's another like hero,
Yeah.
I guess, if you want to call that.
Yeah.
And as in high school, most of our coaching staff was Welsh, right? So the only real rugby tapes that we got when somebody actually sent them back from Britain
Yeah.
were
Wales.
Welsh games in like the crowning years, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, and everybody knows Gareth's try against the All Blacks, right? For
Yeah.
the Barbarians. And
Yeah.
I just kind of was like dumbstruck. And I went, oh, Gareth, yeah, please me. I said, I always said if I got to meet you, I'd congratulate you for your try against the All Blacks in '74. And he goes, ooh, if I had a pound for every time somebody told me that. And anyway, so I got on well with him from there. And yeah, I mean, that atmosphere around Cardiff was pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool. That's a good story too.
Yeah. So
Well, listen,
anyway,
that's great.
I could go on, but
No, hey, that's awesome. Listen, I've had a blast. I mean, if you want to go on, I'm completely content to listen to a few more. I don't know. You might have to go to work. It's what, one or 2 o'clock out there?
Yeah, I mean that's probably.
You probably got to go sell some houses or something.
Well, yeah, that'd be a good idea. But yeah, I mean, that's probably good. I mean, I could go on about stuff for a while, but yeah, like I said, just super fortunate to have had the opportunities that I had to play the game. Wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, it was kind of funny. Like everybody's, especially back then, you kind of put your careers on hold to do it. But zero regrets, because the stuff that I got to experience with all my buddies was the best.
That's awesome. That's absolutely beautiful. Zero regrets. What a great motto right there. That could be the name of your movie as well.
Yeah. Well, I would have liked to have, made a couple more kicks or done a couple of things here or there. So there's those kind of regrets, but like no regrets for the path. So
that's great. Well, listen, Bobby, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I really appreciate you taking the time here on this Thursday afternoon. It's beautiful here in New Brunswick. I imagine it's beautiful out there in BC as well. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We take care and go sell some houses, make some money, and maybe we'll get you back on again sometime. Maybe we'll do a joint podcast with Mark and Gareth or something like that, and just swap some stories or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And it's been great talking to you. I've really enjoyed the way you put this together, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much. Cheers. Thanks, Bobby. It's a lot of fun. I love hearing those stories at the end, and talking about running out for your 50th cap and the boys leaving you there behind all by yourself. That was I like that. That's good stuff. Thanks for joining us. Had a great chat. Had a great time chatting with you. It was real interesting hearing your story, and I am sure lots of our listeners are going to enjoy that as well. Coming up soon, we've got Henry Paul, coach of Canada's Sevens men's team. We've got Rod Snow, pride of Newfoundland. We've got Tom Woods, who's back in the fold. He and I have reconnected. Nick Blevins and I are still trying to nail down that date. We've got Travis Larson and Josh Steele, like I said, from San Diego, who are going to be on. And we also have another group pod coming up with Brett Bukaboom, Evan Olmstead, two friends of the pod. And they're going to be joined by Matt Evans and Matt Bukaboom. So that one we're trying to get a date locked in for that as well. As always, though, I want to thank everybody for listening and thank everybody who actually, shares these messages. I like hearing that, from people saying, "Oh, I didn't hear about your podcast, but I saw so and so share it," and I think that's great because the more people that hear about these stories, the better it is for the game of rugby in Canada. As always, got to thank my son Rylan for creating that music for us at the intro and the outro. He put a lot of effort into that, and it's really cool that he's part of this podcast journey with me. As always, want you to feel free to request topics. I want you to feel free to request future guests because without any extra thought from you, it makes it a little bit difficult. But I also want to know who you want to hear from or if there's any questions you want me to ask people. Lastly, this is Jamie. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and most importantly, keep on rocking.